William Harrison Montgomery was not asleep. His eyes were tightly shut. His breathing was heavy and steady. His thin body sank deep into the burgundy-red velvet of his favorite armchair. To anyone watching, he looked like nothing more than a frail, harmless old man drifting into an afternoon nap. But behind those closed eyelids, William was fully awake. His mind remained sharp, calculating, and waiting. This was a game he played often, a habit he called a truth test. William was 74 years old and one of the wealthiest men in the South. He owned real estate companies, luxury hotel chains, and numerous lumber processing factories spread across Georgia and neighboring states. He had everything a man could dream of. Except one thing: trust. Over the years, William had grown bitter. His 3 children rarely visited him, and when they did, they spoke of nothing but his will, as if it were the only thing about him that still mattered. His business partners smiled to his face, but sharpened their knives behind his back the moment he turned away. Even former employees had stolen from him silver spoons, cash from his wallet, rare bottles of liquor. Gradually, William came to believe that everyone on earth was greedy. He believed that if you gave someone a chance to take something without being caught, they would take it. And today, he decided to test that theory. One more time. Outside the heavy oak doors of his study, rain poured down violently, hammering against the glass panes like gunfire. Inside, the fire in the marble fireplace flickered, radiating a warmth so comforting it made one feel safe enough to let their guard down. William had staged the perfect setting. On the small mahogany table beside his hand, he placed a thick envelope. It was already open. Inside lay a stack of $100 bills totaling $5,000, an amount large enough to change a poor person's life for an entire month. The bills were deliberately left sticking out, looking as though a confused old man had accidentally forgotten them, right where anyone could see. William waited. Then he heard the door handle turn. A young man named Jamie stepped inside. Jamie was the newest janitor and maintenance worker at Montgomery Estate. He had only been working there for 3 weeks. Jamie was young, about 28, but his face carried the exhaustion of someone far older. The dark circles beneath his eyes told the story of sleepless nights and relentless worry. Jamie was a single father. William knew this from the background check. Jamie's wife, Rachel, had died 2 years earlier from complications during her second childbirth. The baby had not survived either. Rachel was gone, leaving Jamie with a mountain of medical debt and a 7-year-old son named Noah. Today was Saturday. Normally, Jamie worked alone, but today the school was closed for emergency repairs after the storm. Jamie couldn't afford child care. He had begged the housekeeper, Ginny Crawford, to let him bring his son to work, promising the boy would be quiet as a mouse. Ginny reluctantly agreed, but issued a blunt warning. If Mr. Montgomery saw the child, both father and son would be thrown out immediately. William heard the soft footsteps of the man, followed by much smaller, lighter footsteps, those of a child. "Stay here, Noah," Jamie whispered, his voice trembling with anxiety. "Sit in the corner on the rug. Don't move. Don't touch anything. Don't make a sound. Mr. Montgomery is sleeping in the chair. If you wake him, Daddy will lose his job, and we won't have anywhere to sleep tonight. Do you understand?" "Yes, Daddy," a small, gentle, obedient voice replied. William, playing the role of a sleeping old man, felt a flicker of curiosity slip past his skepticism. That voice wasn't mischievous. It carried the tone of fear. "I have to polish the silver in the dining room," Jamie whispered urgently. "I'll be back in 10 minutes. Please, Noah, be good." "I promise," the boy said. William heard the door close. Jamie was gone. Now there were only the billionaire and the boy. A long silence stretched out. The only sounds in the room were the crackling fire and the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. Tick, tock, tick, tock. William kept his breathing steady, perfectly mimicking deep sleep. But in truth, he was listening to every smallest sound in the room. He expected the boy to start playing. He expected the sound of a vase breaking, or the soft scuffle of feet as Noah explored wealth he had never touched before. Children were curious, and poor children, William had always believed, longed for what they didn't have. But Noah didn't move. 5 minutes passed. William's neck began to ache from holding his head in the same position, but he did not break character. He kept waiting. Then he heard it. A very faint rustle of fabric. The boy was standing up. William's entire body tensed, as if every sense had been switched on. Here it comes, he thought. The little thief makes his move. He heard small footsteps approaching his chair. They were slow, hesitant, as though Noah were weighing every step. The boy came closer, and William knew exactly what was drawing his gaze. The envelope. $5,000 lay there, just inches from William's relaxed hand. A 7-year-old would know what money was. He would understand that it could buy toys, candy, or food. Maybe even a week without worrying about where we'll sleep tonight. William pictured the scene he had rehearsed hundreds of times in his mind. Noah would reach out, snatch the money, and stuff it into his pocket. Then William would open his eyes, catch him red-handed, and fire the father on the spot. Another lesson learned. Never trust anyone. The footsteps stopped. Noah was standing right beside him. William could almost feel the child's breath. He waited for the sound of rustling paper. He waited for the hurried grab. But it never came. Instead, William felt something strange. A small, cold hand gently touched his arm, so light it felt like a feather. William had to strain not to flinch. What is he doing? He wondered. Checking if I'm dead? Noah withdrew his hand. Then William heard a heavy sigh, far too heavy for such a small child. Mr. William, the boy whispered, so softly it was nearly swallowed by the sound of the rain. William didn't react. He sniffed and let out a fake snore, loud and gruff, exactly like a cranky old man. Noah moved. Then William heard a sound that confused him. Not the sound of money being taken, but the sound of a zipper. What is this boy doing? William thought, his mind racing. Is he getting comfortable? Is he planning to take a nap too? And then William felt something warmer being placed over his legs. It was the boy's jacket. A thin, cheap windbreaker, still slightly damp from the rain outside. But Noah laid it across William's knees like a small blanket. The room was drafty, the large windows still leaking cold despite the burning fireplace. Only now did William realize his hands really were cold. Noah carefully smoothed the little jacket over the old man's legs. Then the boy whispered again, murmuring as if speaking to himself, "He's cold. Daddy says sick people shouldn't be cold." William's heart missed a beat. This was not part of his script. The boy wasn't looking at the money. He was looking at him. Then William heard a soft rustle on the table. Ah, he thought, here it is. Now that he's lulled me into a false sense of safety, he'll take the money. But the money didn't move. Instead, William heard the sound of paper sliding gently across wood. The envelope was pushed, but not to hide it, and not to take it. William dared to crack open his left eye. Just a sliver. a slit barely a millimeter wide, hidden behind his lashes. And what he saw shocked him to his core. Noah stood by the table, a small, thin child with messy hair, clearly wearing hand-me-down clothes. The toes of his shoes were worn through, yet his face was filled with focus, seriousness, and care, enough to make an adult feel ashamed. Noah noticed that the envelope was hanging precariously over the edge of the table, as if it might fall to the floor. He simply pushed it toward the center, closer to the lamp, so it would be safe. Then Noah noticed something else. On the floor, near William's feet, lay a small leather-bound notebook. It must have fallen from William's lap earlier when he sat down. Noah bent to pick it up, wiped the dust from the cover with his sleeve, and placed it on the table beside the envelope of cash. "Safe now," Noah whispered. Then the boy returned to the corner rug. He sat down, pulled his knees to his chest, and wrapped his arms around himself. He trembled slightly. He had given his only jacket to a stranger, and now he was cold. William lay there, his mind completely blank. For the first time in 20 years, William Harrison Montgomery didn't know what to think. He had set a trap to catch a mouse, but what he caught instead was a dove. The wall of suspicion that had built up in his heart like stone began to crack, just slightly. "Why didn't you take it?" William screamed silently. "They're poor. I know they're poor. Your father's shoes have holes in the soles. Why didn't you take the money?" And hey, before the story continues, where are you watching from? The United States? Canada? Australia? Or somewhere I've never even heard of? Drop a comment and let me know how far this story has traveled. And if you enjoy stories about one small moment that changes an entire life, don't forget to subscribe, because what William does next is something that even a man as rich as he is will find shocking. But the question is, when Jamie returns and sees Noah's jacket lying across his boss's legs, will he feel grateful, or will panic take over, causing him to ruin everything with his own hands? Before William could process what had just happened, an old memory suddenly surged back, one he had tried to bury deep for the past 20 years. It was the winter of 2005. William was in the hospital then. His wife, Margaret, lay in the hospital bed, so thin she was barely a shadow of her former self. Cancer had quietly consumed her body for 18 months. The doctors said she had only a few days left. William sat beside the bed, holding her hand tightly. He had canceled all meetings, canceled every business trip. For the first time in his life, he put a human being above work. "You're here," Margaret whispered. Her voice was hoarse, broken. "I thought you'd be too busy." "Nothing is more important than you," William said, silent tears sliding down his cheeks. Margaret smiled weakly. Then she asked, very softly, "Where are the children?" William stiffened. Their 3 children, Richard, Thomas, and Elizabeth, were not there. Richard was in Monte Carlo. Thomas was in Aspen. Elizabeth was in New York, attending a lavish fashion launch. All 3 had told their father they were too busy to come. "They'll be here soon," William said. A gentle lie, but a necessary one. Margaret looked straight into his eyes. She knew. She had always known. "Don't let your heart grow bitter," she whispered. "Promise me, William. Promise me you won't let my death turn you into a bitter man." William nodded. He promised. But he did not keep that promise. Margaret passed away at 3 in the morning, alone, with only William by her side, holding her hand until her final breath. The 3 children called 3 days later, not to offer condolences, but to ask about the will From that day on, William began building a wall around his heart. He fired all longtime employees simply because he suspected they might have taken something. He stopped believing explanations, stopped believing my eyes. He began testing people, examining them, setting traps, and every time they failed. Until today. Until Noah. Before William could fully process the surge of emotions rising inside him, the heavy door to the study suddenly opened once more. Jamie burst in. He was gasping for breath, barely able to breathe at all. His face was pale with terror. Clearly, he had run the entire distance from the dining room, not daring to slow down for even a second. Jamie's eyes swept rapidly across the room. First, he looked toward the corner rug, where Noah sat curled up, trembling, without his jacket. Then his gaze shifted to the armchair, and his heart nearly stopped. His son's old, cheap, dirt-stained jacket was draped over the billionaire's expensive suit trousers. Right beside it, on the mahogany table, the stack of cash still lay there, untouched. Jamie's hand flew to his mouth. In his mind, the worst possible scenario immediately took shape. He thought Noah had disturbed the boss. He thought his son had touched things he wasn't allowed to touch. Worse still, he thought Noah had tried to take the money, and then panicked, trying to cover it up. "Noah!" Jamie hissed, his voice sharp with panic. He lunged forward, grabbed the boy's arm, and yanked him to his feet. "What did you do?" he demanded rapidly, his voice shaking. "Why is your jacket on him? Did you touch him? Did you touch that money?" Noah looked up at his father, his eyes wide, confused and frightened. "No, Daddy," he said, his voice trembling. He was shivering. "I just wanted to keep him warm, and—" The paper was about to fall, so I fixed it to make it safe. "Oh, God!" Jamie cried out, tears immediately filling his eyes. "He's going to wake up. He's going to fire us. We're finished, Noah. I told you not to move." In his panic, Jamie hurriedly pulled the jacket off William's legs. His hands were shaking so badly that he nearly knocked over the table lamp beside him. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry," he whispered to the man who was sleeping, even though he was certain the man couldn't hear him. "Please, please don't wake up. Please." As Jamie trembled, yanking the jacket away, an image suddenly burned into his mind, one he could never erase. Rachel, 2 years ago, Columbia County Hospital, a delivery room soaked in blood and filled with the shrill alarms of machines. Rachel lay on the bed, pale, struggling to draw shallow, fragile breaths after a failed emergency cesarean section. Jamie clutched his wife's hand. Beside them, in a small bassinet, was 3-year-old Noah, a child too young to understand what was happening, knowing only enough to cry in fear. "You're going to be okay, right?" Jamie asked, his voice breaking. "The doctor said you'll be fine." But Rachel knew. She smiled weakly, her icy fingers tightening around Jamie's hand one last time. "Promise me. Never let our child go hungry or cold like I once did," Rachel whispered. "He deserves a better life than we had. Promise me." "I promise," Jamie sobbed. "I'll do everything. He'll never suffer the way we did." Rachel closed her eyes. The battle with internal bleeding ended 30 minutes later, and Jamie had held little Noah beside Rachel's coffin, silently swearing, "Daddy will do everything so you can have a better life. I promise." But now, standing in this luxurious study, looking at Noah shivering without his jacket, Jamie suddenly realized a painful truth. He had failed. He couldn't protect his child as he had promised. He couldn't give Noah a good life. And now, the very act of kindness his son had shown, the kindness Rachel had taught them both, was about to destroy everything. Jamie clenched the damp jacket in his hands, feeling as though he were gripping the shattered remains of a promise he had failed to keep. "I'm sorry, Rachel," he thought silently. "I tried." William felt the jacket being ripped from his body, and at the same time, he felt the father's terror. It radiated from Jamie like burning heat. This was not the fear of a guilty man, nor was it the fear of a fraud caught in the act. It was the fear of a father standing on the brink of losing everything because of his child's simple act of kindness. Jamie wasn't afraid of some invisible monster. He was afraid of William himself, afraid of a man with so much money and so much power that his employees lived in terror, to the point where a child's small gesture of compassion could be treated as an unforgivable crime. And in that moment, William suddenly understood a chilling truth. He had become the monster everyone feared, not because he was cruel, but because he had made others believe that their kindness was dangerous. William knew he could not lie still for another second. It was time for him to wake up. William let out a low groan, a deliberate, dramatic groan, and shifted in his armchair. Jamie froze instantly. He pulled Noah tightly against his chest and hurried backward toward the door, his entire body tense like a deer caught in the headlights of an oncoming truck. William opened his eyes. He blinked a few times, as if waking from a deep sleep, slowly adjusting his vision to the light in the room. He stared at the ceiling for a moment, then gradually lowered his gaze to the panicked man and the small boy standing close to the door. William put on the most perfect expression of irritation he could manage. He frowned, his thick gray brows drawing tightly together. "What?" he grumbled, his voice hoarse and harsh. "What is all this noise? Can a man not rest in his own home?" I'm very sorry, Mr. Montgomery," Jamie stammered, bowing his head. I was cleaning. This is my son. I had no other choice. The school is closed. We'll leave right now. Please, sir, don't fire me. I'll take the boy outside. He won't bother you again. Please, I need this job." William stared at the two of them. His eyes paused on the envelope of money on the table. It was still sitting exactly where Noah had pushed it. Then he looked at the boy. Noah was trembling, no longer from the cold, but from fear. Fear of the irritable old man who seemed to be judging his entire fate. William sat up straight. He reached out, picked up the envelope of cash, and tapped it lightly against his palm, out of sheer habit. Jamie squeezed his eyes shut, bracing himself for the accusation, for the moment when his employer would accuse them of trying to steal. "Boy!" William said loudly. Noah peeked out from behind his father's leg. Yes, sir." "Come here," William ordered. Jamie tightened his grip on Noah's shoulders. "Sir, he didn't mean—" "I said," William raised his voice. "Come here." Noah gently pulled his father's hands away. He walked slowly toward the armchair, each small step trembling. He stopped right in front of William's knees. William leaned forward, his face only inches from the boy's. He stared straight into Noah's eyes, searching for a lie, searching for the greed he was certain existed in every human being. "Did you put your jacket on me?" William asked. Noah swallowed. "Yes, sir." "Why?" William pressed. "I'm a stranger. I'm rich. I have an entire closet full of fur coats upstairs. Why would you give me your jacket?" Noah looked down at his worn shoes. Then he looked back up at William. "Because you looked cold, sir," he answered. "And my dad says that when someone is cold, you give them a blanket, even if they're rich. Cold is still cold." William went still. Cold is still cold. A truth so simple, it was brutal. He turned to Jamie. The man was holding his breath, as if one wrong inhale would cause everything to collapse. "What's your name?" William asked, his voice softening just a fraction. "Noah, sir." William nodded slowly. He looked down at the envelope of money in his hand. Then he glanced at the open door of the study. A thought, a plan, quietly formed in his mind. The test wasn't over. In fact, it had only just begun. The boy had passed the first level, the level of honesty. But William wanted to know more. He wanted to know whether this was just a random moment, or whether the boy truly possessed a heart of gold. William slipped the envelope of money into the inside pocket of his suit jacket. "You woke me," he grumbled, returning to his irritated act. "I hate being woken up." Jamie let out a choked sob. "We'll leave, sir," he repeated, hurriedly taking Noah's hand and turning toward the door. "Stop!" William's voice lashed across the room like a whip. Jamie halted instantly. He didn't dare take another step. He turned back slowly, his face drained of all color. "I haven't said you're allowed to leave," William growled. He lifted a trembling finger and pointed directly at the velvet armchair where he had been sitting. "Look there." Jamie followed his gaze. On the burgundy velvet was a small, dark, wet stain, where Noah's damp jacket had rested. "My chair," William said, his voice dripping with feigned anger. "Imported Italian velvet, $200 a yard. And now, it's wet, it's ruined." I'll dry it right away, sir," Jamie stammered. "I'll get a cloth." "Water stains velvet," William lied. He stood up, leaning heavily on his cane, and stepped closer to the terrified father. "It can't just be dried. It needs professional restoration. That will cost $500. William watched them carefully. This was the second part of the test. He wanted to see whether the father would take his anger out on the child. He wanted to see whether pressure would make Jamie shout, blame Noah for a sum of money he could never afford to pay. He wanted to know whether the bond between them would break. Jamie looked at the stain. Then he looked at William. Tears spilled freely down his exhausted face. "Mr. Montgomery, please," he begged. "I don't have $500. I haven't even been paid this month yet. Please deduct it from my wages. I'll work for free. I just, please don't hurt my son." William's eyes narrowed slightly. The man was willing to work for free. That was rare. But William still wasn't satisfied. He looked down at Noah. "And you," William said. "You caused this damage. Do you have anything to say for yourself?" Noah stepped forward. He didn't cry. His small face was strangely serious. He reached into his pocket. "I don't have $500, Noah said softly. "But I have this." He opened his small hand. Resting in his palm was a tiny, worn toy vehicle. A little yellow bus, missing one wheel. Paint chipped. Old and worthless to anyone else. But the way Noah held it was like he was holding a diamond. "This is Mama's Hope," Noah explained. "It's the fastest bus in the world. It used to belong to my mom, before she went to heaven. Daddy gave it to me." Jamie gasped. "Noah, no, you don't have to." "It's okay, Daddy," Noah said, his voice trembling but brave. He looked up at William. "You can take Mama's Hope to pay for the chair. It's my best friend. But you're angry. And I don't want you to be angry with my dad." Noah reached out and placed the broken toy bus on the expensive mahogany table, right beside the leather-bound notebook. William went completely still. He stared at the tiny toy. His breath caught in his throat. The room suddenly felt too small to breathe. He thought of the stack of cash in his jacket pocket. Thousands of dollars. Then he looked again at the three-wheeled bus on the table. This boy was offering the most precious thing he owned to fix a mistake born from kindness. He was giving up the only remaining keepsake of his mother, just to save his father's job. William's heart, frozen for so many years, split open with a sharp, searing pain. And suddenly, he understood a truth that left him shaken. This boy, who had nothing, was richer than William would ever be. William had millions of dollars, but he had never, and perhaps never would, sacrifice the thing he loved most for anyone. Silence stretched on. Outside, the rain continued to pound against the windows. William slowly picked up the toy. His hand trembled. "You." His voice no longer growled. It was barely a whisper. "You would give me this, just because a chair got wet?" "Yes, sir," Noah replied. Is it enough?" William closed his eyes. In his mind appeared the image of his own children, calling only when they wanted a new sports car or a vacation home. They had never given him anything. They only knew how to take. "Yes," William whispered, opening his eyes. They were wet with tears. "Yes, Noah. It's enough. More than enough." William sank back into his chair. The performance was over. He could no longer play the villain. And for the first time in many years, he felt tired. Not from age, but from the crushing weight of guilt he had carried with him his entire life. "Sit down," William said, and his voice was completely different now. No sharpness, no heavy authority. It was the voice of an old man who was tired and lonely. "Sir?" Jamie froze, confused by the sudden change. "I said sit down," William growled out of habit, then immediately softened his tone. "Please, just sit. Don't look at me like I'm about to eat you." Jamie hesitated for a few seconds, then slowly sat on the edge of the sofa, pulling Noah neatly into his lap by instinct. William lowered his gaze to the toy in his hand. He gently spun the remaining wheels with his thumb, his eyes distant. "I have a confession," he said, still looking at the floor. "The chair isn't damaged at all. It's just wet. In an hour, it'll be dry." Jamie exhaled, a breath he had been holding in for far too long. "Oh, thank God." "And," William continued, lifting his head to look directly at the father and son with an intense but honest gaze, "I wasn't asleep." Jamie's eyes widened. You weren't asleep?" "No." William shook his head. "I was pretending. I deliberately left that money on the table. I wanted to see if you would take it. I wanted to catch you." Jamie instinctively tightened his hold on Noah. Hurt was clearly written across his face. "You tested us, like mice in a maze." "Yes," William admitted without evasion. "I'm a bitter old man, Jamie. I believe everyone is a thief. I believe everyone has a price." He lifted a trembling finger and pointed toward Noah. "But this boy," his voice broke. "He didn't take the money. He covered me with his jacket, simply because he thought I was cold. And then he offered me his mother's keepsake." William raised a hand to wipe away a tear rolling down his cheek. He didn't care that they could see it. "I lost my way," he whispered. "I have all the money in the world, yet I'm poor. And you have nothing, yet you've raised a king." William stood up. He walked toward the fireplace and took a deep breath, as if gathering the last of his courage. Then he turned back to face them. "The test is over," William declared, "and you passed. Both of you." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the thick envelope of money. He stepped in front of Jamie and held it out. "Take this." Jamie shook his head firmly. "No, sir. I don't want your money. I just want to work. I want to earn a living honestly." "Take it," William insisted. "This isn't charity. It's a reward. Payment for the lesson your son just taught me." Jamie hesitated. He looked at the envelope, then down at Noah's worn shoes. "Please," William said gently, "buy the boy a warm coat, a new pair of shoes, and buy yourself a bed that doesn't make your back hurt every morning. Take it." Jamie's hand trembled as he reached out and accepted the envelope. "Thank you, Mr. Montgomery," he said, his voice breaking. "Truly, thank you." "No need to thank me yet," William replied. A small, genuine smile, the first in many years, touched his lips. "I have a business proposal for you, Noah." Noah looked up, his eyes instantly lighting up. "For me?" "Yes," William said. He lifted the small toy bus. "I'll keep Mama's hope. It's mine now. You gave it to me as payment." Noah's face flickered with sadness for a brief moment. Then he nodded seriously. "Yes, a deal is a deal." "But," William continued, "I can't drive a vehicle with only 3 wheels. I need a mechanic, someone to help me fix things around here, and someone to help me fix myself." William knelt down, a movement that sent a sharp pain through his aging knees, so he could be at eye level with the 7-year-old boy. "Noah," he said softly, "would you like to come here every day, after school? You can sit in this study, do your homework, and teach this grumpy old man how to be kind again. In return, I'll take care of your education, all the way through college. Deal?" Noah turned to look at his father. Jamie was openly crying now, one hand covering his mouth, his shoulders shaking. He nodded. Noah turned back to William. He smiled, a gap-toothed smile, pure and heartbreakingly beautiful. "Yes," Noah said. Then he held out his small hand. William Harrison Montgomery, the billionaire who had never trusted anyone, reached out, took that hand, and shook it. 3 years have passed since that fateful rainy day. The spring of 2008 arrived gently, and with it, the mahogany-paneled study of William Harrison Montgomery changed so much that it was nearly unrecognizable. What had once made people hold their breath upon entering was now filled with light. The curtains were always drawn wide, allowing the morning sun to spill into every corner of the room. The walls, once cold and bare, were now covered with colorful drawings, Noah's school artwork, family portraits, pictures of houses with smoking chimneys and bright blue skies. On the large desk, amid business files and legal documents, there was always one small but striking object: the yellow bus, Mama's hope. William had hired the finest jeweler in Savannah to restore the missing wheel. The new wheel was not merely replaced. It was crafted from pure 24-karat gold. Noah, now 10 years old, sat cross-legged on the rug, focused intently on his math homework. William sat in his familiar armchair, this time not pretending to sleep, leaning toward the boy, patiently following every number. "Mr. Montgomery," Noah frowned, tapping his pencil on the notebook. "I don't understand this part about decimals." "Call me William, my boy," he smiled, repeating what he had said countless times before. "Let me take a look." Jamie entered with a tray of tea. He was no longer wearing his worn janitor's uniform. Instead, he wore a simple, well-fitted suit. William had promoted him to property manager of the estate, placing him in charge of the entire maintenance and gardening staff. "Thank you, Jamie," William said, accepting the teacup. There was no longer a distance between employer and employee, only trust and friendship. "Have you heard about Richard?" Jamie asked quietly. William sighed. Richard, his eldest son, had just been arrested for stock fraud. William had tried to help with the best lawyers money could buy, but Richard wanted only one thing: a blank check. "He chose his own path," William said, his voice lowering. "I tried to teach him, but I taught him too late." Noah looked up from his notebook. "You're not a bad father, Mr. William," he said naturally. "Sometimes grown-ups just forget how to listen." William chuckled softly. His heart warmed in a way money never had. "You are a very wise boy, Noah Collins." Time continued to pass quietly. By the summer of 2010, Noah was 12 years old. He sat dwarfed by the large leather chair in the study, his feet still dangling above the floor. In his hands was a letter, and his voice trembled with excitement as he read it aloud. I got in," Noah shouted. "A full scholarship." William, now 79, walking more slowly than before, clapped his hands, unable to hide his pride. "Wonderful! I knew it. I wrote your recommendation letter myself." Jamie entered. His suit now looked even more polished. He no longer lived at the Montgomery estate. William had bought a small, cozy house nearby for him and Noah. Still, Jamie brought Noah every day and stayed to work. "Dad, did you hear?" Noah ran over and threw his arms around him. "I heard, son," Jamie smiled, tears shimmering in his eyes. He turned to William. "You've done far too much for us." "No," William shook his head. "You are the ones who have given me far too much. You gave me a family." And that was the truth. William's 3 biological children never returned, but Jamie and Noah were there every day. They ate dinner with him, watched movies with him, told him small stories, silly jokes. For the first time in 15 years, laughter filled Montgomery Estate. Then came the fall of 2012. Noah, 14 years old, taller and far more composed, sat beside a hospital bed. William lay there, thinner, weaker, but still conscious. A mild heart attack had kept him under observation. "I'm scared, Mr. William," Noah whispered, gripping his hand. "Don't be afraid," William replied, his voice hoarse but steady. "I'm not going anywhere yet. I still have to wait until you graduate from college." Jamie sat on the other side of the bed, also holding William's hand. "You changed our lives," Jamie said, his voice breaking. William shook his head gently. "No, you are the ones who changed my life. Before I met you, I was just a bitter old man waiting to die. Now, I'm a happy old man who wants to live." That week, William called his lawyer. He began rewriting his will, and then, exactly 10 years since the day Noah placed the jacket over his legs. Spring of 2015. Noah, 17 years old, stood at the gates of Harvard University. He had been accepted with a full scholarship. The neatly tailored suit he wore was a gift William had bought him for his birthday. William, now 84, stood beside him, leaning on his cane. His eyes shone with undisguised pride. "You did it, my boy," William said. "Not just me, sir," Noah shook his head. "We did it. You were the one who believed in me when no one else did." William pulled him into an embrace. "I love you like my own son, Noah. You know that, don't you?" "I love you too, Mr. William," Noah replied, hugging him tightly. Jamie stood nearby, raising his camera. He was no longer a janitor. He was the executive director of the Montgomery Foundation, the charity William had established to help single-parent families like theirs once was. "Let me take a picture of you two," Jamie said, smiling through tears. William and Noah stood side by side, hands resting on each other's shoulders. They were not grandfather and grandson by blood, but they were family, by choice. And that is the strongest kind of family of all. Another 3 years passed quietly. In the spring of 2018, Montgomery Estate was crowded once again. But there was no music, no wine, no polite laughter of lavish parties. The atmosphere in the house was heavy with solemnity. This was not a celebration, but a final gathering. In the spacious study, lawyers, business executives, and influential figures from the financial world filled the rows of chairs. Near the window, a young man stood silently, gazing out at the garden beyond. Noah. Now 20 years old, Noah was tall and composed, with a bright face and a sharp, well-tailored suit. He stood looking out at the garden, where Jamie, now 41, was carefully arranging flower pots, as if trying to keep everything orderly, everything beautiful. One last time. Jamie no longer carried the weary look of the man he once was. He appeared calm, mature, and content. He was the chairman of the Montgomery Foundation, an organization managing millions of dollars allocated annually to charitable causes. Inside the room, the air fell completely silent as the attorney began reading the last will and testament of William Harrison Montgomery. William had passed away peacefully in his sleep 3 days earlier. Serene. He died in his burgundy velvet armchair, the very chair where, 10 years earlier, a small test had changed his entire life. William's 3 biological children were also present: Richard, Thomas, and Elizabeth. They sat on the opposite side of the room, clearly separated from everyone else. Their eyes kept darting to their watches. They whispered to one another about selling the mansion, about the companies, about how the assets would be divided. They did not look grieving. They looked impatient. Attorney Henderson cleared his throat softly and began reading. "To my children," he read slowly from the will, "I leave the trust funds that were established for you at your births. You never visited me without mentioning money, so I assume money is all you ever wanted. You already have your millions. Enjoy them." The 3 children muttered in irritation, but quickly appeared satisfied. They stood up, preparing to leave the room, as if the rest of the will were no longer worth hearing. "Please wait," Attorney Henderson said. "There is more." They stopped and turned back, annoyed. "For the remainder of my estate," the attorney continued, "including my companies, this mansion, all investments, and personal assets, I leave everything to the only person who gave me something when I had nothing." All 3 children froze. They turned back, confused. "Who?" Richard blurted out. "We are his family." The attorney took a breath and read each word clearly. "I leave everything to Noah Collins." The room erupted. Shouts of outrage filled the air. The 2 sons pointed at Noah. "Him?" they shouted. "The janitor's son? This is a joke. He manipulated our father." Noah did not move. He did not speak. He simply stood still, holding a small object in his hand, his thumb unconsciously rubbing its familiar surface. The attorney raised his hand, calling for order. "Mr. Montgomery left a letter explaining this decision," he said, "and he instructed me to read it aloud." The attorney unfolded the handwritten letter, his voice slow and steady as the room gradually quieted. "To my children, and to the world, you measure wealth in gold and property. You believe I left everything to Noah because I had lost my mind. You are mistaken. I am repaying a debt. 10 years ago, on a rain-soaked Saturday afternoon, I was a beggar in spirit. I was cold, lonely, and empty. A 7-year-old boy saw me shivering. He did not see a billionaire. He saw only a human being. He covered me with his only jacket. He protected my money when he could easily have taken it. But the greatest debt was repaid when he offered me the most precious thing he owned, a broken toy bus, to save his father from my anger. He gave me everything he had, expecting nothing in return. That day, he taught me that the poorest pocket can still hold the richest heart. He saved me from dying as a bitter, hateful man. He gave me a family. He gave me 10 years of laughter, noise, and love. So I leave him my estate. It is a small exchange, because he gave me back my own soul." The attorney folded the letter. He looked at Noah. "Noah," he said softly, "Mr. Montgomery wished for you to receive this." Before the attorney could present the velvet box, Elizabeth, the only daughter, jumped to her feet, her face flushed red. "We are his biological children," she screamed. "We carry the Montgomery blood, and he is just the son of a janitor." Noah slowly turned toward her. His eyes held no anger, only a strange, steady calm. "But I carry his heart," Noah said quietly, "and for 10 years I was there for him. Where were you?" Elizabeth fell silent. Richard, the eldest son, stormed forward angrily. "My father lost his mind. He was manipulated by a greedy, poor child." "Stop!" Jamie's voice came from the doorway. He stepped inside and stood beside his son. "He didn't lose his mind," Jamie said, his voice trembling but firm. "He wasn't alone. He had us, every day, for 10 years. We ate with him, laughed with him, cried with him. And you? Where were you?" Richard stood speechless. Thomas, the second son, spoke coldly. "We'll sue. We'll overturn this will." Attorney Henderson shook his head. "You may try, but this will was drafted by 5 top attorneys, witnessed by 3 independent parties, and Mr. Montgomery recorded video confirmation of his sound mind. This will cannot be contested." The 3 children looked at one another, then left in silent fury. The attorney presented a small velvet box. Noah opened it. Inside, resting on pristine white silk, was the old toy bus. Mama's Hope. William had kept it for 10 years. He had polished it carefully. He had even asked a jeweler to replace the missing wheel with a piece of pure gold. Noah picked up the bus. Silent tears streamed down his face. He did not think of the mansion. He did not think of billions of dollars. He paid no attention to the angry shouts behind him. He thought only of his friend. The gruff old man had patiently sat beside him, helping him solve difficult math problems. Noah walked toward Jamie, who had just come in from the garden. Jamie wrapped his arms tightly around him. "He was a good man, Noah," Jamie whispered. "He just needed a jacket." Noah nodded, clutching the bus tightly in his hand. "Yes," he said softly. "He just needed a jacket." As the city of Savannah entered the year 2023, Noah Collins was 25 years old. He was no longer the skinny boy with worn-out shoes from years past. Noah had graduated from Harvard with a degree in business administration, a path many believed would lead straight to yachts, supercars, and lavish parties. But Noah chose a completely different direction. He did not use his inherited wealth to show off. Instead, Noah transformed Montgomery Estate into a community center. The mansion that once symbolized isolation and suspicion has now become a free school for the children of single-parent families. The mahogany study, where the test had taken place years earlier, was no longer a heavy space of power. It had become a children's library filled with light, books, and the eager whispers of young dreams. At the center of the room, inside a carefully preserved glass case, stood Mama's Hope, the toy bus with golden wheels. Beside it, a brass plaque bore a simple yet profound inscription: "In memory of William Harrison Montgomery, a man who learned that true wealth is not measured by what we own, but by what we give." One quiet afternoon, Noah walked into the library. In a corner of the room, a boy of about 7 sat staring intently at the bus inside the glass case, his curious eyes never leaving it. "Do you like it?" Noah asked, sitting down beside him. The boy nodded. "It's beautiful. The wheels are made of gold, right? That's right, Noah smiled. But did you know that when this bus was given to the man who once owned this place, it only had 3 wheels? It was old and broken. The boy frowned, confused. Then why did he accept it? Noah was silent for a moment, then spoke slowly. Because sometimes the most valuable gift isn't the most perfect one. It's the one with meaning. That bus was given out of love, not money, and that's what makes it priceless. The boy looked up at Noah. Who was the boy who gave it to him? Noah smiled, his eyes glowing with memory. That's a long story, but in short, it's the story of an old man who forgot how to love, and a boy who helped him remember. The boy thought for a moment, then asked softly, Do you think someday I could do something like that? Help someone remember how to love? Noah placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. I know you can. Do you know how? How? By being kind, even when it's hard, even when no one is watching, and especially when no one is watching. The boy nodded solemnly. I'll try. That's enough, Noah said gently. As the boy ran off to play with the other children, Jamie walked into the library. He was now 46 years old, his hair streaked with gray, but his face was peaceful and fulfilled. Thinking about him, Jamie asked, sitting beside his son. Every day, Noah admitted. Do you think he would be proud? Jamie looked around the room. Children reading, studying, laughing. Walls that were once cold are now filled with life. My son, Jamie said, his voice thick with emotion. He wouldn't just be proud, he would be amazed. You took his gift and multiplied it 100-fold. Noah looked toward the bus in the glass case. I only did what he taught me, Noah said, to give without expecting anything in return. Outside, the gentle Savannah sunlight poured through the windows. The rose garden was in full bloom. Children's laughter echoed through the space. Montgomery Estate was no longer a fortress of suspicion and fear. It had become a beacon of hope. And it all began with a boy, a jacket, and a lesson so simple it was unexpected. Cold is cold, no matter who you are. The story of William Montgomery and Noah Collins reminds us of a profound truth. Kindness is an investment that never fails. In a world where everyone is trying to take something, those who are willing to give are the ones who truly change the world. William had all the money in the world, but he was poor until a child taught him how to love. Never underestimate the power of a small act of kindness, a jacket, a gentle word, or a quiet sacrifice. They can melt even the coldest hearts. When you give without expecting anything in return. Life will repay you in ways money never can. Noah did not buy his success, he earned it through kindness. And in a world full of suspicion and greed, that is the rarest and most precious kind of success. If this story touched you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, so that stories of kindness like this one can reach even farther. Thank you for watching, and see you again in the next stories.